continue with this very strange story. The escape of convicted rapist and murderer Thabo Bester is like something from a Hollywood blockbuster. His re-emergence after allegedly dying in a prison cell fire last year has raised the possibility of corruption within Correctional Services departments and facilities. To date, 3 officials from the emergency security team have been suspended, and a security supervisor is before the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration. Popcru spokesperson Richard Mamabolo joins me now to tell us more on this. Richard, as I mentioned in my introduction, really, this is like a movie. It's just, and these are the kinds of things that you see in a movie. How does somebody just escape from prison like this, and only a year later are authorities aware of this? As Popcru, I'm sure you have a response to this.
Yeah, look, we're quite shocked by the incidents. I think the circumstances leading to the escape of Mr. Bester are quite surprising, especially considering that since then there had been an internal investigation, and as you said, that there were people who were charged, who were suspended, and that therefore meant that the case was closed. It's only now that there are media reports in the past week that investigations are being opened, and that suggests that there would have definitely been, certain people who would have been involved, because it's quite clear that it could not have been one person who actually orchestrated this whole thing. The fact that there was a body which was placed in the cell, and the fact that Mr. Bester then left his cell would have meant that there had been some form of a coordination. And I think thanks to the reports that came out, otherwise we would not have known about this, and it would have generally been assumed that Mr. Bester was deceased. So it raises a lot of questions about the management of private prisons, because you remember that the role of managing that prison is not that of the DCS, but that of the private prison itself. And the fact that in line with the prescripts that guide around how, when SAPS rather the DCS mandates a private company to run their prisons, on what prescripts are supposed to be followed, are clearly ignored. There's a Correctional Services Act 111 of 2018, which clearly stipulates that what roles that the Correctional Center, the DCS, should play in ensuring that the private prisons actually abide by the prescripts. Now, in this regard, it then therefore means that the DCS only relied on information that they got without necessarily making proper investigations. And according to the prescripts, they are supposed to have what you call a controller, who's supposed to monitor all events within those prisons. So we think that both parties then need to be held accountable. And of course, I think as a union, we've been saying quite a number of times that the use of private prisons in our country is not conducive, since their priorities around the profit maximization, as opposed to the core mandate of the DCS, which is to rehabilitate, which is again a constitutional imperative that the DCS must obviously abide by.
I wonder what your thoughts are, Richard, on the fact that this body that was found in that prison cell was already at stages of decomposing. The body was already decomposing. So one wonders how that body even got into this prison in the first place, never mind into the prison cell. And that obviously alludes to the fact that there were a number of correctional service officers that were part of all of this. How easy is it for this to actually unfold? Probably very easy if it literally happened under our watch. But it raises a lot of questions, especially about the state of that body that was found.
No, most definitely. Clearly, this was orchestrated, but as well, you should remember that the running of the prison was not under the guide of the DCS, rather the prison, the private prison. So it's people who work in that private prison, and mainly senior people who would have known how a body could just find itself in a cell, whereas the person who's supposed to be there escaped. So it's some investigation which we think should be immediate, looking into who was responsible and what kind of, I heard earlier on from the journalists who investigating the story that they will be making further revelations during the week. So I hope that from then we will get a sense of who was involved, but it could definitely not have been junior officials. It's definitely senior officials within the private prison itself. But again, like I said, the DCS derelegated its duty of ensuring that they ensure that there's compliance and they monitor the situation at all times. So it cannot be that after a year, they then come and say, okay, because there are reports now, they then reopen the investigation. It means that they have not been doing their work all along.
I wonder who you think should take responsibility for this, or whose heads should roll in this particular matter, because about 2 weeks ago, we spoke to the police minister, who confirmed to eNCA that the DNA of Thabo Bester did not match with the individual that was found in that cell. And then we spoke to the Department of Correctional Services on that Saturday, and they said to us that they are still investigating. And a week later, we suddenly get a post-mortem report confirming that indeed Thabo Bester did not die in that cell. Who do you think must take responsibility? Is it the Minister of Police? Is it the Minister of Correctional Services and Justice, Ronald Lamola? Who exactly? Because I'm flabbergasted at the fact that you have these various departments. A whole convicted rapist and murderer escaped from prison, and only a year later, because of ground up's work, now the country is in a complete state in panic.
Look, based on the circumstances that are at play, we think that both the DCS management and the G4S should take accountability. But government should also take accountability to the extent of ensuring that they really do away with private prisons. I think one of the issues we've been raising is the fact that we've been spending about over 1 billion rands on a yearly basis for the 2 private prisons in the country. And of course, the results have not been as expected, because they are not concerned about human rights. Their main focus is just to generate profit. So I think we find fault in both the DCS and, of course, the private company that is running the prison there in Mangaung.
Certainly. Okay, thank you so much for your insights. We do appreciate it. We'll definitely be keeping track of the story. It's such a bizarre story and actually just so unacceptable. It's going to be very critical for the Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamola, to come forward and address the nation so we can get a better understanding of what exactly is going on. And the Police Minister, because we know now that there is a manhunt out for the supposed Thabo Bester.